So let's flip this over. Let's look at if you're watching on YouTube, we're gonna flip this over to the bracket form, because this shows what Joshua is making the point. So BYU with this set of rankings, ESPN plugged them into the projected bracket. We all plug them in immediately to the projected bracket. BYU would still be the number 4 seed, so they would get a bye. Actually, this would actually be pretty fun. So the way this is set up with this week's rankings, Boise State would be the 12 seed going to Columbus to play Ohio State, and the winner would play BYU, which absolutely, to your point, great path for Ohio State, although you have to deal with Ashton Jeanty. So
Yeah,
maybe not awesome.
Not a great path for anybody, by the way. He's phenomenal.
He's so good. I want to talk about some of these other teams that got in as at larges, though, as we're looking at this bracket. So that matchup that I mentioned, that would be the 5-12 game. You go to 6-11, that would be Texas, Alabama. That game would be in Austin. 7-10 game would be Penn State hosting Notre Dame, who, by the way, comfortably got into the bracket. We'll get to that in a second. And then the 8-9 game in Knoxville would be Tennessee hosting Indiana. So the Hoosiers also make the bracket, and they make it with some wiggle room. So let's talk about some of those teams that made it. Indiana, by the way, as a 9 seed, feels that's absolutely low. If that resume, I understand the strength of schedule is like 103 or whatever in the country. If that team had winged helmets, if it said Michigan on their jerseys, where's Indiana ranked?
Yeah, I know. I'm with you on that. And I'll take this a step further. They should 100% be above Penn State.
Yes,
like that is not a question for me. Where's Penn State's ones at?
How are they? Yeah, they're hosting. They're in position to host.
But who, if we want to get into this, who have you actually beaten? Like, where are Penn State's good wins at compared to Indiana? Their resume to me is essentially the same in terms of like good teams that they would have gone against and beaten. And by the way, Indiana, all they do is blow people out. All they do is win by double digits. They got down by 10 points over the weekend. First time they trailed all season long and just rattled off damn near 50 straight points. Like this is it. That is what bothers me. Like, because these actually matter in terms of where the teams are ranked. Like this is where the meat of it comes into me, where you actually have to rank these teams properly.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I just keep thinking, I know it's a different committee every year, and I get that we're paying attention like deeper into the rankings than we would have last year because only the top 4 spots mattered. But Michigan didn't really have issues with its schedule. Michigan barely played anybody with a pulse. They didn't have their head coach for ultimately half of their regular season games. It did not matter, ultimately, to the selection committee. I get it. These are different. It does sound like they are looking at resumes more. But, like, how does this happen from one year to another where Michigan's schedule was soft and it was not a factor and Indiana's getting dinged for it?
And the justification last year for everybody who remembers was, well, Michigan's beating the hell out of these teams. So they're clearly a very good football team. Why is that not the same logic when it comes to Indiana then? It is a very similar thing to me in terms of their schedule and when they started playing tough teams. Michigan didn't play Penn State and Ohio State until the very end of the season last year, for folks who don't remember. And Indiana is going to have a very similar thing. Michigan coming up this weekend. They got Ohio State in a few weeks. The whole thing is wild. It's just wild to me.
Here's where I get worried about it because so Indiana is sitting in this projected bracket as a number 9 seed. You mentioned what's ahead for them. If they lose to Ohio State by like a touchdown, are they just completely knocked out?
They shouldn't drop them if they lose by a touchdown, in my opinion.
I agree, but I'm saying like the way the committee is evaluating them, but they're not giving them that credit for the way that they've won these games. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I'm worked up about BYU too. Like, obviously it actually could matter too, right? If Boise State leapfrogs them or something and earns the bye. But I feel like these teams that are doing all that they possibly can against the schedule that they drew, right? Like, they're not getting that type of credit when Penn State and Texas, these teams just do not have marquee wins. They're just in conferences that are believed to be very strong and they're competitive and they're beating up on each other. And we're just kind of grouping them in that way. Like Alabama being in as net large, that makes a lot more sense. They've got that win over Georgia. I understand that carrying the resume.
I'm with you. I'll just put it like this for the question that you asked about if Indiana loses by, say, a touchdown or so. So Ohio State goes on the road, which Indiana will go on the road. They lost by a point. And that's like justification, along with the Penn State win, of course, but justification that they should be the number 2 team in the country. It would be unreasonable in my mind that if Indiana plays Ohio State within a touchdown, that they should drop at all. That would be the performance that you would expect from another team within the top 10 going on the road to play Ohio State.
Yeah, I am like, I was trying not to get mad, but I'm getting preemptively mad about this.
This is a grievance show.
This is an airing of grievances. It's always Festivus on the Rushing the Field pod, okay?
Yes.